Christian McCaffrey, the open field, inside the 30, inside the 20. McCaffrey, touchdown.
Okay, everybody, we are live. We are back, and we are here to talk about the Carolina Panthers draft pick review and just kind of go over their picks and recap everything that happened. We've got a great cast for you tonight. Of course, I'm Jeff Hasley. I'm joined by my co-host Cowboy Joe, as well as Brittany Schmidt and her husband Tom. And joining us to help break this down are analysts Andy Singleton. You know him as @PeoplesPen on Twitter. We got Matt Patanti as well from Football Guys. He's our offensive line expert. And we have joining us tonight special guest Skylar Callahan, who puts together everything associated with Panthers SI. So we got quite the crew here tonight, guys. Wow, how are you?
Great.
Doing good. Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
All right, great. Thank you. Real quick, I just want to go over some things that I want to talk about in this show. All of the picks that happened, and I want to introduce you as Panthers fans to some of these players that are the newest members. And let's just really quick just take a look at the picks that they had. Right, you've got J.C. Horn, Terrace Marshall, Brady Christensen, and Matt. We're going to talk about him, the offensive tackle, of course. I want to get into Deontay Brown as well, the guard that they got from Alabama, Davion Nixon and such. But first, let's talk about J.C. Horn, because he's the big pick. He's the pick that actually was the pick that everybody was unsure about. What is Carolina going to do? Everyone was thinking, could they possibly go offensive tackle with Rashawn Slater? Could they have taken Justin Fields, the quarterback? But no, they decided to go with J.C. Horn. And Skylar, I want to ask you, and because I know we were all part of this here when this all happened, what was your initial reaction when Horn was the pick?
Yeah, I was actually really surprised to see maybe not even Justin Fields go there, but maybe Rashawn Slater, who I thought was probably going to be their number one guy if Penei Sewell would go off the board. So a little shocked that they picked J.C. Horn. I think initially I was, a little disappointed in the pick, but kind of looking back on it, the way the board fell and the way that day 2 and day 3 went, I think J.C. Horn was probably their best selection, because you don't know what Justin Fields is going to do. You don't know how good he's going to be. And if you bring in Justin Fields, now you have a quarterback controversy where you don't know who's going to be that guy. No one's going to whoever's going to get the starting job is going to be looking over their shoulder, where just go out and surround Sam Darnold with talent at wide receiver, running back, offensive line, and start building that defense up. So I think as the draft went on, I liked the pick more and more.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of warming up to that, and they are liking the fact that Carolina decided to go with a cornerback, because that's an area that they could definitely use some help with, especially someone who can play man coverage as well as press coverage. Andy, what was your initial reaction when you saw the pick come over?
Yeah, so I believe the first time I was on the show about a month or so ago, I was saying I hope I could see them going defense. I could see them adding to the secondary. So I did like the pick. I love what they're building on defense at every position. All three levels, they have elite difference makers. And this just helps solidify and push talent down. When you look at a guy like Troy Pride, who they took recently, like now he doesn't have to have expectations on him. He could slide into more of a nickel role. The way I see it, you had 3 true kind of shutdown corners in this draft that you would feel comfortable banking on as first-round picks. When you look at Surtain, and then you look at Caleb Farley, who had the question marks coming in. But those were the 3 top, shutdown corners. You could throw Newsome in that fold too, so maybe 4. But when you look at the offensive line, it's stretched a little deeper as far as starting talent. And they gambled. They rolled the dice. I think it was my most interesting observation was, were they going to go for a quarterback because they were in position to, or were they going to trust the trade they just made for Darnold and say, hey, we'll roll the dice with this? They rolled the dice. They wound up, every team you could say, we were talking about it before we went live, that this is the time of year where everybody feels like they nailed the draft. But I look at what they did across the board, and they got 3 players outside of the top 125 that could all return top 50 value. So I love what they did with their draft overall, and it really started with that first pick and saying, listen, we want to build an elite defense. We need a shutdown corner. This gives us that, and then we feel we can fill in our gaps later on. And I think they gambled and they won and they played it right. So I love that they went this way the first pick.
So guys, for this show, I did some research on looking for some videos on J.C. Horn, and I came across a video that was on YouTube. The channel is called All Things Covered, and it's done by Bryant McFadden. You guys remember him, right, from the Steelers? He played in like the mid-2000s and so. And so he had on his show J.C. Horn as well as Patrick Peterson, and it was an opportunity for Patrick and Bryant to interview J.C. Horn, and this was before the draft, right? So there was no understanding of who selected him, who Carolina that Carolina took him. So I want to show you the some like snippets of this particular video. I actually reached out to Bryant and I asked him for permission if I can show this, and he's like, "Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of give us credit." And I'm like, "Absolutely, I will." So without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring that video on and let you guys, as well as everybody listening and watching, fill you in a little bit more about who J.C. Horn is and what some of these like top people. I mean, Patrick Peterson is a potential Hall of Famer, and what's he saying about him? So let's go ahead and play that, and then I'll stop it periodically, and we can discuss a few things. So here we go.
All right.
Horn has joined us here, All Things Covered. Before we get into the nitty-gritty with you, JC, I want to read something to you that was posted back in 2017.
Jeez.
It's from the USA Today article from 2017. And here's what JC had to say in that USA Today article. Before I read the article to you, JC, do you remember what you said in 2017? Of course, you had a lot of reporters in front of you. I know they quoted a lot of your statements. But this is what he said. He draws inspiration from his father. Horn looks up to a fellow 6 foot plus corners like the Minnesota Vikings, Xavier Rhodes, and the Cardinals, Patrick Peterson, as players whose styles he likes to emulate. Peterson can always take away that number 1 wide receiver in the game, Horn said. So when you hear that statement back in 2017, and when you look at how you go about going and taking care of your business on the football field, what have you tried to go out and accomplish to emulate some of the things that Pat P has been able to do in his professional career?
Man, basically everything, man. When I first switched over to the defensive back position, my dad just gave me a few guys to look at, and Pat P stood out the most. Even back to the LSU days, and, since I started playing DB, I watched a lot of his tape. Try to model my game after him, and like I said, you take away number 1 guys, and that's what you want to be able to do as a corner. So definitely drew a lot of my inspiration from him.
Well, since we're talking about stats, JC, man, you had one hell of a day at your pro day, and it wasn't a shock to you, but you may have stunned some people at your pro day with your numbers. I'm gonna read off a couple numbers right now. Your 40 was a 4.39. 41.5 vert, 11-1 broad jump, 19 bench. What did you feel like you had to prove with that opportunity laying right there in front of you?
Hey, Pat P, some people had clocked him at a 4.32. There was a few clocks out there that had 4.32 on it also.
Hey, so it sounded like he was well prepared to me.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm going to stop it here just real quick, but I mean, the whole interest of J.C. Horn before the pro day was, here's a really good cover guy. He can do man, he can do press, he can do zone. But the big question was his speed, and he proved the doubters wrong. I mean, what did he say he had? 4.37, 4.39, something like that.
4.39. 4.39.
4.39, yeah, exactly. So. I mean, that says a lot right there. Just looking at this video, and we'll go back to this. And by the way, guys, I just want to let you know, and everyone watching, if you want to go and watch this whole video, I only took like a few snippets of it here. Maybe I'll get to in a minute. But go and watch it. I'll put the link in the comments when we complete this. But definitely go and watch it because there's a lot of really cool information and neat moments, with a potential Hall of Famer talking to J.C. Horn, a rookie who's coming in, who is, obviously the top defensive player in the draft as well as the top corner in the draft too. But all right, let's continue.
But just going into it, talking to teams and stuff like that, they wasn't really sure of my speed. That was kind of the biggest question on me. I knew I was going to smash every other category, but I particularly wanted to do good in that 40 man, and I just tried to lock in, stay focused throughout the whole day. And I came out with a 4.3. We was on hand time, so the combine might have been a 4.42 or something like that. So hand time gave me the 4.3 I wanted, man. And I just feel like you said, it answered a lot of questions about me and just gave me a good rep.
But when you look at some of the competitors at the cornerback position, where would you rank yourself amongst all the corners that are available, especially the corners that have a first-round grade?
I'll put myself at the top. I'm sure they'll say the same thing, but I feel like what separates me is just my versatility, the way I compete. I feel like when you watch me on tape and you watch them, it's two different animals you're looking at. And like I said, it's
what kind of animal are you? What kind of animal are you? You say two different animals.
Man. I'm a dog, man. I don't know about them, but I always feel like I'm the biggest dude on the field, and I just try to play that way. So I feel like that separates me from the rest of the corners in the class.
You don't see too many corners in college football follow the opposing team's number one wide receiver. Remember?
Hold on, I'll get back to that in a second. But guys, he's saying he's a dog, man. How does that make you feel as Panthers fans? Brittany, what about you?
Listen, you know how I feel about loving people that are aggressive. I love it. Like, I just love that attitude. I love that kind of chip on your shoulder kind of, I'm going to show you on the field. All right, go ahead, talk. One of my favorite players of all time is Steve Smith for that reason. He could talk so much smack. One of my favorite Steve Smith interviews, he's like, I want your mom to watch Sports Center and be mad at that I was dragging her son. I was like, I always just loved his attitude. And I love a guy that can not just talk the talk, but really walk the walk. And Steve Smith was one of those, granted he was a different position because, but he had that attitude and he was just that good. So if this kid can bring that sauce attitude and have the skill, I think that's great for Carolina. I think Carolina needs someone like that.
Yeah, and go ahead, Andy. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just gonna say I have a totally newfound respect for Tom right now after that, but nobody got that one. Yeah,
don't let him fool you when I get fired up. He loves me.
That deep gravelly voice has me thinking of DMX, and then for him to say, he's a dog, I'm like, yeah, that just makes sense. So this is getting me fired up listening to this interview.
Yeah, it's Carolina has not had that type of alpha dog mentality at corner since Josh Norman. Skylar, question for you, buddy. You psyched for Horn here watching this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I guess the one thing I really like about him is not only is he aggressive, but he knows when to be aggressive and when to kind of back off. And I think that's one thing that a lot of these young corners that come into the league, they get burned by because they don't really know when to push the button. And sometimes they're so used to college and just winning those one-on-ones all the time. They get to the next level. It's a different type of receiver. They're much bigger, faster, stronger, and they overplay routes. They overplay just plays in general. So I think sometimes that can kind of hurt a prospect. But a guy like J.C. Horn, like I said, he knows when to be physical. He knows when to press the button, when to maybe bait the quarterback into a throw. Mm-hmm. I love that about him, and I think that's why I think he's going to be successful. But really, he's just a Matt Rule kind of guy. And I think that's when you look at this draft class from top to bottom, that's just kind of the whole theme is they're Matt Rule guys. They're not, got squares that they're trying to put into a round hole. These are the perfect type of guys that Matt Rule and Phil Snow want for this defense. And again, you look at what Scott Fitterer helped build out in Seattle. It's kind of a similar, a little bit different though, but a little similar as to what he's doing here in Carolina. He's getting that physical, tough corner that's going to smack you right in the mouth and let you know about it, and that's J.C. Horn. He's got a premier edge rusher in Brian Burns, and they got some linebacking. There's some guys at linebacker that they're hoping that'll pan out. So I really like what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball. And to win in this division, you have to have a guy that can shut down people, and I think J.C. Horn may be their best chance.
Yeah, and that's a good point about the division and shutting down people, and that's a really good segue because Bryant McFadden's about to talk to him about covering a receiver, one-on-one, right, throughout the entire game, shadowing. That's the word I was looking for. And so he's going to talk about Seth Williams in Auburn, and that game against Auburn. If you're familiar, he dominated that game. So let's go back to the video and see what he says.
A few times against Julio. And this past year, JC had the opportunity to follow Seth Williams from Auburn. And many felt like he was an super talented wide receiver. Granted, he had the numbers to back that statement. But JC put on a coaching clinic.
You feel
man, Pat, oh, man, listen.
Yeah, I just about to ask you. This is my question for you, Mac. Like, obviously we know, I had the opportunity to watch JC a couple of times, and you've been very, very high on this young man. Like, why are you so high on JC? And I know why. Talk to me about it.
Okay, let me put my analyst hat on. One thing I like about the cornerback position, I love seeing development and growth. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look at JC from his freshman year, to the sophomore year, and currently to where he is now, you saw progress. He wasn't stagnant. And I think what he did this past season was just continue to add to the resume of all his all the sound things he was able to do. And when he played against Seth Williams, he showed the ability to efface the opposing team's number one wide receiver.
Right.
And technically, he has it. Mm. Toughness, he has it. Mm. The competitive nature, he has it. And just the willingness to bite your leg off if he has to. You got to have that mentality. You know what I mean? And he's a fundamentally sound corner. And the biggest question mark, I think, regarding JC, and, he can agree or disagree with, was the 40 time. Yeah. I think that was the biggest question mark. Like, what will he run? Sure. You know what I mean? Either to solidify that first round grade or either to add more question marks about should he go in the first round. So that's why I was high on him, Pat P, man. The kid can play for 4 quarters and he's not afraid. When you're on Sunday football, they're going to come at you. And either you're going to tuck your head and go to the end of the bench, or you're going to stand up and say, keep coming. I'm going to swing. You hit me, I'm going to hit you. And I think he's that type of player.
Wow, right? That's pretty impressive. It's really cool to see these NFL players, kind of playing coach to this young man, right? I mean, we know what he is capable of. Now he's just got to go do it, and it's really refreshing to see. And this whole video was probably about maybe 35 minutes, and I tried to cut it down. And I believe me, I would love to have everything on here, but I don't want to take everything. This isn't a long enough show. We're only on Horn right now. So I tried to, kind of minimize that, but I mean, he's the top pick, so I want to talk about him, but, wow. I mean, it's really cool to see. Any comments from you guys on this so far?
What do you think? I mean, this is open-ended. Do you think this sends a message to Jackson that his time in Carolina could possibly be running out after this season?
No, because I think they need Jackson. I mean, someone's got to play the other side of the field, right?
You got Boye. You got Boye now. Well,
right, but you also have multiple players. If you've got your slot corner covered. I mean, there's probably 5-6 DBs on the field at any given play, so they're all going to have their opportunities.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with the corner position is we don't really know what AJ Boye is going to bring to the table because he's suspended for the first 2 games of this year. He's had some injury issues. He's never really been back to that Pro Bowl form since that 1 year with the Jaguars. So you don't really know if you're getting home run with him or not. And I think it's kind of a wait and see. It's kind of like the Eli Apple situation a year ago. It's a guy that's got a lot of talent, but you don't know if he's going to be on the field for you. So, and that's why I think they signed Rashawn Melvin earlier in the offseason as well to kind of get more stability in that room. I think if Boye can play at a high level and Jackson's still dealing with injuries, then yeah, I think that could come into play where Jackson may be a guy they move off of. But I think that's something that there's going to be a lot of factors that go into that.
I get that, and I like that, but this goes kind of to what I was talking about before. I mean, unless he turns out to be Eli Apple, who has similar draft capital, and I think there's different mindsets with the two of them, but you're drafting him to be your CB1. So that takes the pressure off of AJ coming back. That takes the pressure off of Sean Melvin. That takes the pressure off of everybody and lets them, if they play at what they're capable of now, which could be above average, now you got two shutdown spots. And that's what you took him at this pick for, to be that guy that can take the pressure off of everybody else and extend that depth.
You guys basically you got Earl Thomas last year with Chin, and now you got your Sherman with Horn.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that. I mean, especially if you're looking at how this kind of compares to Seattle, right? They still could use their they kind of have in Shin. I see him more as who's the other guy? Not Thomas.
Chancellor.
Thank you, Cam Chancellor. I see him more as Cam Chancellor, and they don't really have that Earl Thomas yet. At least that's my take on it. But still, I mean, if he can remove half of the field or at least some of the time do that, and do we know, is he going to shadow, is he going to shadow Julio? Is he going to shadow Calvin Ridley? There's also Kyle Pitts, and that's just the Falcons. So there's question marks there about that, but they definitely needed him, especially with the division. And I almost wonder if they knew that Atlanta was going to take Kyle Pitts, and we know that he already has had experience against Pitts. If that had any kind of factor into the decision, but
stick chin on Kyle Pitts.
No, and I thought also the Cowboys were very high on Horn, so they were waiting for him to land to their spot so they could take him. I think Carolina knew that off the bat and just jumped on him.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, we also knew that they really needed that position. So, all right, let me get back to the video because, guys, I just love wanting to be able to show this to you. So, hang on one sec.
Man, I wish you the best of luck, my brother.
I appreciate that.
Hey, JC, how did you handle? I highlighted the game against Seth Woods. And matter of fact, I didn't get a chance to finish asking the question. At that point, going into the game when you knew they were going to have you following Seth, and when the game started, at one point did you really come to terms like I'm about to dominate?
As soon as you stepped out of the locker room.
Really? Nah, honestly though, just watching a lot of film that week, Seth Williams was a big 50-50 ball guy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I just lacked targets all throughout my career. That's kind of why my interception numbers wasn't high and stuff like that. And, when I got in the game, I still had the question of what they actually throw at me. We got in the red zone and they came back to back to back, a slant, two fades. Mm-hmm. So I just looked and I was like, yeah, this is gonna be one of them games. And I went to the side and just told my teammate Israel Mukwama, we had 3 picks the year before at Georgia. I said, I might catch you today. And that's before I had any pick. So I just knew it was gonna be one of those games when I seen that they wasn't scared to throw at me.
Hey, moving forward to draft night, where do you expect to get drafted? We already know and we feel that you are the best corner in this highly, talented DB group this year. What do you expect you to go?
Man, I've been hearing so much different stuff. Like B-Mac said, just before the season, being ranked to go high first, some second, and now I'm hearing early is 8, 9, 10 to the 20. So, man, I don't even know. I'm ready for all of it to be over, and I got a team I'm playing for, and I can play football again.
He went 8. The first pick and the first defensive pick in the draft. That's so awesome to see. Just wow! I love watching this interview. I've seen it a few times, and every time I watch it, it seems like I see something else. Matt, you look like you wanted to say something there.
So I'm not a huge cornerback film expert, but I can tell you that the NFL is like a fraternity in a lot of ways, and it helps if your dad's in the fraternity.
Yeah.
And not to say he can't do it. It's almost like he grew up moving from different city to city. When guys like Patrick Peterson and Brian McFadden see you and they're like, hey, what's up, buddy? It's like he's in the fraternity already, and talk about his pro day. I think Patrick Surtain's pro day was the day before. and he went out to like break all of Patrick Surtain's numbers, and he did. So he's highly competitive. I think you're going to see a lot of interesting stuff from him as a rookie. He's going to be the type of guy that like bounces off of tackles because he's trying to knock people out. Like, you're going to see that, but like he's going to clean it up, and like it just shows the value of corners in this league. You know, you need those guys to somehow keep your offense from having to score 40 every game.
Yeah, and it looks like we may not have time to. I'd really love to show you more of this video, but I want to get into some of these other players. And by the way, please, if you have the opportunity, go and see the rest of this. Just go see the whole video, all things covered, and we'll share the link in the comments so you can have it. But definitely watch that. So, all right, so let's get to the next pick here. And they originally had pick 39, and elected to trade down. Of course, they just took J.C. Horn, their corner, and now we're all thinking, maybe they're going to go offensive tackle. They really need a tackle. Who's available, right? Tevin Jenkins was available at that point, wasn't he, Matt? But instead of taking him, they traded down. They traded with Chicago, and they traded down to 52, and they picked up some additional picks. Skylar, I got a question for you. What was your thinking when they made that trade?
Really shocked because there was a lot of tackles on the board that I liked. Tevin Jenkins is definitely one. Dylan Radins out of North Dakota State was another. Liam Eichenberg, I can't remember if he was already off the board, if he was still there, but it was in the ballpark. There was a couple of other guys there too. But, you know, I think as far as a value standpoint, they got really good value out of Terrace Marshall. And I just don't think that any of those guys early in that second round are going to be surefire day one starters. And I think that's kind of what Matt Rule and Scott Fitter was looking for is what are some of these guys that are going to be able to come in and help us right away? Because if you draft Tevin Jenkins, if you draft Dylan Radins, they're going to be sitting behind Cameron Ervin no matter what. I mean, how many guys come into the league at left tackle and start right away unless you're like, you know, something special like Penei Sewell or Rashawn Slater? So I think they looked at it from that standpoint. They said, you know, let's go ahead and trade down, get some extra draft capital. And I love the pick. I think that's something that they needed was another receiver to fill in for Curtis Samuel. And, you know, it's something that they really needed. And I don't know why Mel Kiper, for the longest time, is sitting here saying that the Panthers are going to take Devontae Smith. Why in the heck do the Panthers need Devontae Smith? They already have Robbie Anderson. They have DJ Moore. The one thing they are missing in this receiving core is a big-bodied, physical receiver that can help them win 50-50 balls in the red zone. That's what they needed. They went out and got it. They haven't had it for a couple of years now. And I think they got probably the best one in the draft outside of Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I would agree with that, especially with the pedigree that we see from LSU football in terms of receivers. And the fact that they were able to nab Terrace Marshall after trading down twice. And, you know, you have other teams who are taking Tutu Atwell, right? Kadarius Toney, you know, among others, right? And here's Terrace Marshall still available. So, guys, you remember John Lobb, right? From the Gridiron Scholar, who was on our show, real high energy guy. Well, he did a video with his buddy Matt Hicks, the FF educator, on Terrace Marshall. And he said, go ahead and share this with the crew. So even though John can't join us tonight because he has other obligations, we have his video. So we're going to get his energy one way or another, okay? Here we go. This is how he's breaking down Terrace Marshall.
Terrace Marshall is who we're breaking down here on this video.
Matt, the best part about being your teammate and why I like talking to other people and their opinions, you have sold me on Terrace Marshall, and I moved him up my board because I listened to you. I heard what you said. If we had done this a month ago or early, he was outside my top 10. He was like number 11 or 12.
Also, I do want to let you know this happened. This was before the draft, just so that you have context here.
All the way up to my number 8. Not as bullish as you, but I see what you see now. And I go back. He was the number 1 prospect in Louisiana and number 2 wide receiver in the country in high school. So he steps onto the LSU campus with a prolific recruiting resume. Now, he was injured his senior season, and he missed the campaign of high school. But as a junior, 55 catches for 1,250 yards and 15 touchdowns. Now, I'm going to repeat this right now. Terrence Marshall scores touchdowns. He's been doing it since high school. Now, I know people don't like Narrative Street, and analysts will tell you that you can't predict them, and I agree for the most part. But there are some players who just get in the end zone, and statistically, Terrence Marshall has shown us this. We'll talk about touchdowns at LSU also. 2018, the Under Armour All-American. Matt, as a true freshman in 2018, he walks into a crowded locker room at LSU. That is the understatement of the year. He did play in all 13 games, and he had 12 receptions for 192 yards. So the talent was there, just a tremendous amount of talent in the locker room. Couldn't get a lot of opportunities. If he goes to a Pac-12 school like Amon-Ra St. Brown, he might go on the field and become a star immediately, but he walks into the SEC in one of the best locker rooms in the country. How talented was it? He was on that sophomore, as a sophomore, he was on that LSU team. We must put this into context. He was teammates with Justin Jefferson, first-round pick, Jamar Chase, should be a first-round pick this year, and Terrence Marshall. That's a crowded wide receiver pecking order for the LSU Tigers. He totaled 46 receptions for 671 yards and 13 touchdowns. All 3 of those young men scored double-digit touchdowns. So now we have 2 years in a row. Terrence Marshall scored 15 junior year of high school, 13 sophomore year of college. Last year, we know Jefferson went on to the NFL, became a star. Jamar Chase opted out. Terrence Marshall was the focal point of this offense, everyone. Don't look at the raw numbers. He only played 7 games. Then he decided to opt out and get ready for the draft. He was 48 for 731 yards and once again, 10 touchdowns. He averaged 15.2 yards per catch. Unbelievable numbers. One thing that I noticed, I went back, I saw 21 touchdowns in the last 24 hours. Matt, what is amazing about Terrence Marshall? He has touchdowns from 50 yards out. He has touchdowns on slants where he just outruns the corner and he beats a safety to the end zone. And then he's in bunch formations at the goal line, and he's in the middle of traffic. They're running crossing patterns. They're knocking people off, but he's got a linebacker in front, a safety behind him, a cornerback chasing him, and he plucks the ball. I mean, he has scored almost. I saw so many different ways this young man excelled to get into the end zone. Matt, I agree with you now. He is a value. And Matt, I bet NFL scouts are going to love him. I know you scout the player, not the uniform, but we're human beings. When you think about Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, DJ Chark, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, you're going to scout Terrence Marshall as an NFL team, and you're going to highly rank this young man. What's your film study say?
Wow. So that's our guy John Lobb talking about Terrence Marshall. So
I just love his energy every time he talks.
I know. I'd say I call him Roger.
I feel like he should be like my personal hype man. Like when I need like energy, just be like, John.
So I went back and looked at the draft. Terrence Marshall was the 10th wide receiver selected in this draft. You guys I already mentioned Tutu Atwell, Dwayne Eskridge, Kadarius Toney. All these guys were taken ahead of him. And I think, number one, his background with LSU and his background with Joe Brady is going to fit in perfectly. He already knows the offense. Carolina loves to use that that shallow cross offense with these dig routes that are going to bring mismatches to opposing linebackers and such. And when you got McCaffrey coming out of the backfield and the linebacker has to focus on him, someone's going to be open. And we saw that all last year. We saw that with Joe Brady's offense. Skylar, I want to ask you, what is your take on why Terrace Marshall here is going to be an excellent fit year one?
Well, first thing first, I mean, he already knows the offense for the most part. I mean, this is, stepping right into an offense that he was already used to at LSU with Joe Brady. The scheme, the philosophy is all pretty much the same. It's just a little bit of difference in verbiage and terminology, but it's pretty much going to be a smooth transition for him. And most of the time when I look at guys that come into the league at receiver, mainly at Terrace Marshall's kind of stature and what people project for him to do in his rookie year, I kind of would say, yeah, maybe as a backup to start, maybe that number 4 wide receiver kind of gets rotated in. But I really think he could be a starter in this lineup because, yeah, David Moore has got experience. He can be explosive at times. But, again, Terrace Marshall has that experience in this offense already, and he gives them something completely different from Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, where David Moore pretty much gives them a little bit of the same thing. So I think having a guy like Terrace Marshall is going to be able to open things up for guys underneath like Anderson and Moore because they're going to take their shots downfield with those other 2 guys as well. But to have a guy that can catch passes in traffic over the middle like Terrace Marshall is going to be critical for this offense. Curtis Samuel really took a step up last year. He was not that same player the first couple of years in his career. He really became a good, reliable third down target. They need someone to step up in that place, and I think he could be that guy.
Yeah, man, nice. I love the understanding of your thoughts here with that, Skylar. And I really am interested to see exactly how fast he can transition into a role that we all want to see him play. Do you guys want to see more about Terrace Marshall? Let's see what Matt Hicks says about him. You want to go ahead and move on to Brady Christensen?
Question for Andy about Marshall.
Okay.
From like a scouting perspective, like you said, he was the 10th receiver selected. Like, what were the biggest question marks that would make him slide that far?
So first of all, it's good to hear John's voice. I actually got John started in video. I did the video series doing this stuff about 3 years ago and got John. And then when I backed out, he joined with Matt, and they've been doing it the last 2 years. So I'm glad to see their success with Draft Bible being associated with Sports Illustrated now as well, and it's always good to hear John. But Terrace Marshall was a first-round grade for me for a while. I've been touting him for so long that his father started following me, and we started talking behind the scenes, thanking me for propping his son up. And I am a true fan of his. I had him as round, wide receiver 5 or 6 in this class. We seem to have stopped favoring the size-speed combo for wide receivers and going for more the twitchy slot guys, which is fine, but it's almost like a knock on guys that are 6'2", 205 that run 4.4. So for me to see Terrace Marshall slide, the only thing that I saw was potentially some injury concerns, which I was really never privy to. But apparently, the relationship with Joe Brady is there. Apparently, they were convinced that there's nothing to fear. This is one of the youngest receivers. I think third youngest receiver in the class. The production is there. He reminds me of something of a hybrid between DJ Shark, of course, with the LSU comps, but not just the comps for the school, but the size, the speed, the production, but also the Terry McLaurin, again, for the same reasons. He's a notch slower than McLaurin and Shark, but he's right there. Size-wise, he's the same thing. He produced like Terry McLaurin did as far as limited receptions, but highly productive at yardage, especially touchdowns. So you get this guy, and again, this goes to speak to how well the Panthers drafted, that they took guys that could be elite, but don't have to be elite from day one. He definitely could be a starter in this offense. He definitely has shoes to fill, as you mentioned. Curtis Samuel leaving that offense is a big loss for them in terms of how much he stepped up. He was obviously one of the most sought-after free agents this year, but this is definitely a nice fit and a guy that within 2 years could be the wide receiver 1 and a top 10 receiver in the entire league.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have it right there. It's exciting. It's exciting.
And you mentioned, Andy, you mentioned youth, and it's very interesting because the Panthers recently tweeted something about like us. We have the youngest team now, with the draft. So since
I heard somebody else, and I half tease, half serious about my love for the Panthers and what I think they're assembling here. I saw somebody else recently say I'm thinking about placing a futures bet on the Panthers to win a Super Bowl in 2 years, and I was like, I'm all here for it. I love it. It's not
I
just
love it too.
It's not just one player or one positional group. They're really building depth and elite level production. You're talking about the defensive ends before, and you talk about a guy like Gross Mader who's like 3 on the depth chart now and has like elite level upside, and he's just entering year 2. So I mean, they're really developing and they're bombing at the right time as well, and they got the right coach for it, and that just speaks to the trickling down into the whole organization. So they have a lot of things going in the right direction. I mean, I wanted, go back to the first round, I thought a tight end would be a great fit, but obviously Pitts wasn't going to last, and then you kind of priced out at that spot, so the Horn pick was fine. That leads into, what they did a little bit later, but if you can get a guy like Terrace Marshall that gives you size and that end zone threat at the wide receiver position, you're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone, and it's really like a pure upside pick with a safe floor at the same time.
To go off what Andy said about establishing depth, I mean, if you just talk about the wide receiver position alone, I know a lot of Panthers fans were really upset about Curtis Samuel leaving, but think of it this way. Do you want to pay 3 receivers top dollar money or let one of those guys go like Curtis Samuel? You draft a guy like Terrace Marshall who has familiarity with the offense. He's going to be much cheaper on a rookie contract, and you get a guy like David Moore that's got experience. So you pick your poison. To me, I would rather just let Curtis Samuel walk. Yeah. Get a guy in here that has experience in this offense before, and then you got a guy with NFL experience in David Moore. So that's one way to think of it.
And you're talking about the trade for them to even wind up in this position. I mean, to turn trading down and getting more capital, which led to some of these other picks we're going to talk about, and still get Terrace Marshall. You don't pay the big dollar contract to Curtis Samuel. You let him walk. You fill that with maybe even more upside because it took Samuel a couple years to develop. I think it's a great fit.
Before we move on, can I get a quick little Marshall?
Go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
So, again, go back to the first pick, Horn. His father's in the league. This kid, his uncle, great uncle, is a player named Joe Delaney. He won Rookie of the Year in 1982 and died in 1983 in a drowning accident at an amusement park. But to talk again about the fraternity of the NFL, you're talking about the high ceiling, high floor. A guy like this is 20, not even 21. He's got all this opportunity, So I would say if you're looking at Matt Rule's tendency, pick number 1 and pick number 2 are premium bloodline picks.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't know about Joe Delaney being his uncle.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
He's great uncle.
Great uncle, excuse me. But yeah, there it goes. You're just talking more about the family connection. So, all right, let's move on. Let's move on to the next pick here, just to see who that was. And
Brady.
Yeah, it was Brady Christensen.
We're gonna move into Matt's wheelhouse now.
That's right. The offensive tackle from BYU. They obviously pass on offensive tackle in the second round. It took Terrace Marshall after trading down twice. Brady Christensen seems like he's a pretty nice guy from what I've seen, and we're going to see a video about him here soon so we can introduce you guys to him. Matt, what is your take on him, his ability, what he's done, how he can fit in, what type of role can he play?
So the Brady Christensen story is a pro day story. Everybody's there to see Zach Wilson, and then there's this other guy there who's running 4.9, who's bench pressing 30 times, who's vertical jump. All of his numbers are very similar to Slater, to be honest. He has a faster 3-cone than Slater. Basically, his flaws are arm length, 32 and a half arms, and we could talk about arm length at a later point. But if arm length was all it was cracked up to be, Greg Little would be like, Orlando Pace. So, arm length is not really
it's not the be all end all
of anything. In fact, you can be easily overcome by guys like Joe Staley and Joe Thomas. These are not like, long arm dudes. It's more important what you do with your feet, So he's a finesse player. I think you're getting a very similar player to Slater, except for his age. Obviously, he's going to be 25 on opening day. So a player like this has to be good pretty soon. He's not going to get 2 years. He's not going to get Terrence Marshall's window. He's got to play soon. I think they might force him in at left guard, put Elfine at center after Paradis' contract expires. I don't know if he's going to beat out Irving at left tackle, but he'll get a shot. So it's going to be interesting.
Very interesting. I mean, we'll see. And obviously they needed offensive line depth. They needed some help on tackle as well. So, it's
there's good film on the guy too. He has film against Joe Tryon out of Washington, and he has film against Peyton Turner out of Houston. Those are both first-round defensive ends. And except for a sack he gave up again the Houston game, he pretty much shut those guys down, arm length or no. So he has premium film, which is another quality. They probably looked at him and they said, this is a guy that's almost as good as Slater, but just not at first-round price.
So you guys ready to meet Brady?
Let's do it.
Sure. All right, let's bring him on. This is I got this clip from the YouTube channel through BYU called Deep Blue, and it just kind of chronicles a little bit about Brady Christensen. And Joey, he kind of looks like you a little bit, man. So we're gonna take a look at him and see and introduce you guys.
I'm gonna get into free Panther games. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, introduce you guys to Brady Christensen. Here he is.
He was a delight. He was born 10 pounds, and then he was very, very, very shy. But then I think he kind of blossomed after he started playing sports because he was really good at it.
As a freshman, you go run with the football team in the summer. You do summer conditioning with the high school program. And I remember I was about 6 foot, 160, and I couldn't move very good. And my feet were already grown to size 15, and I was just like running with skis around. And so I wasn't very fast, wasn't very big. And we were up in a trip, me and a bunch of my buddies, and they all got the call that they made the high school football team as freshmen, and I didn't. I was the only one left out. And so I ended up playing Little League again, and yeah, it was rough.
He's just really been an underdog, and he takes that to heart, and it's a big motivating thing for him, and I think it's even a motivating thing for him to this day.
I've almost kept a mental note of all the things I've been overlooked. Like the times I'm overlooked, it almost just motivates me to go further and to go farther and to work harder. And I honestly contribute a lot of that to my success here at BYU is being that underdog and feeling like I'm been overlooked, and it just motivates me to go farther.
230 to 240 range in high school, not real heavily recruited because of that. But they did a good job here of identifying him as someone who would fill out and grow.
Didn't Jordan say you took a test in one of your classes that said you need to go to a food therapist because your eating is so bad?
You're like, do you sleep all right? And I'm like, yes. Do you ever think about like ending your life? I'm like, no. And then, do you overeat? And I'm like, well, yes, I overeat. I have to overeat. And then they say, do you sometimes eat until you feel like you're gonna throw up? And I'm like, yes, sometimes I do that. And so by the end of it, all my mental health was all good. It was all checked out. But then it said eating disorder. It said extreme. May want to go get help with it at a doctor. And I was like, what?
It's your job.
I just have to be. I think the biggest thing is just the way that he's grown physically is also matched with the way that he's grown mentally and emotionally. He's gone from a guy, like I said a minute ago, who's somewhat questioned whether he was ready to play and maybe even questioned how good he really could be, to the point where now I think he feels like he can line up and play with anybody in the country, and I'd say he's right.
We've seen a lot of great things from him as a leader,
lot of great things from him as a person, just connecting with his teammates. And that whole offensive line unit is really close because of him. He's a big part of it. And I think he has a sense to know when someone is needing attention or even some comforting. I think he has a great gift of being able to discern who needs help and where to address it. So just a extreme pleasure for me to be his head coach.
My wife is so supportive in football. It's not easy on the wives. I mean, for all of August, you're basically gone from early in the morning till late at night, and then during the season, you're traveling every weekend and you're staying in hotels and whatever. But she's the most supportive thing ever, and it's amazing. She just loves watching me play football. She comes to every game, and she watches film with me even at night. Like, we're watching film and she watches it with me, and she's just like always so supportive and uplifting.
Being able to watch him love it so much, it makes like all the long days and him being gone a lot just so much easier, because he always has positive things to say about it. And I always he'll get home and I'll say, did anything interesting happen today? And he always just I swear he always has something positive to say. Like, I never hear anything negative about the team or the coaches. He just really loves it.
And so when I am playing, I do it for the love of football, but I do it for her as well. I just love to try to be as successful as possible for her and try my best because of her, because I know she's doing the same thing in her aspects of her life, just working her tail off. So I just try to match that and do it for her.
All right, so that's Brady Christensen. That's
Okay, I'm not crying. You're crying.
Can I just say BYU has like some of the greatest like sports marketing at the college level. I'm like a Jets fan that's been following the Zach Wilson saga, and like they have like a Hunger Games level of production. Like they're like making everybody look amazing.
Yeah, they had drone footage and everything. I'm like, whoa, wow, this is something. Shout out to Deep Blue for letting us share that.
But that background music, though, I mean, that was infomercial-ish.
So, like, in the between all that, there was some film, right? And what you see there is a player we're talking about with Deontay later, but Deontay Brown later, is anchor. The word is anchor. And that's Brady's shortcoming, is that he's 6'5", he's 304. You heard in the film, he had to put on 75 pounds of weight from when he was a 225-pound freshman. Then he goes on his missions, and now he's actually a junior. But, like, you had a red shirt, and then he's a junior. It's like, how much more weight can you put on that frame? Especially at the back end, especially in the bubble area, as some of the other football guys would say.
I don't particularly love this pick. I think this was one the Panthers kind of missed on. He's going to be 24 in September, which is one of the oldest prospects in this class. First of all, I'm hesitant to talk bad about any BYU guys because I made some criticism of Zach Wilson and was followed by BYU fans. They are very tight-knit community. But listen, Christensen is not a bad pick, but left tackle at BYU is different than left tackle in the NFL. He looks more like a right guard to me, which is fine and fills a need on the line. But I look at somebody that went after him that I like a lot more. And if you're looking for somebody from a smaller school, Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa was, to me, tested through the roof, much larger, capable of playing left tackle. If you probably put him at right tackle with what you have in Carolina, and you could have got him a little later. He's a year younger. Nothing against Brady Christensen, and for where he went, fine. But I think he could have did better with that pick.
I also really like Spencer Brown, so I'm not going to argue with that. I think that was the only player they traded up for. You know, in a draft full of trade downs, they needed this player, and I think they have a plan for him. And he started 38 games at left tackle. So the scouting report is, can he even play right tackle? Can he even play right guard? They're like, he's a natural right tackle and maybe a left guard. And I would describe him as a finesse player. You're not going to like line up 4th and 1 and get that 1 yard on the goal line behind him, even though it looks like you should be able to. He's not as big as Deontay Brown, like we're going to get to. Like, there are guys 350, you know, but he's got that professional demeanor. He is he is experienced. And BYU is, again, going through the Zach Wilson thing, it's a lot like an NFL team in the sense that they have a huge spotlight on them every week. And everybody in town is following these guys a lot more than if he had gone to Northern Iowa or someplace like this.
Here's a question I have for you, though, Matt. Do you see him as a run blocker or a pass blocker? And I'll transition that to Skyler because you expect Greg Little to come back and man left tackle for you, and he's one of the better run blockers in the league, right? So what kind of identity are you looking to build with this line?
He is a pass protector first and foremost.
Right.
He's not going to get you power yards in the way that a player like Deontay Brown or John Miller will. They call that working in a phone booth, where you get the guy and you're like, as long as he's in the phone booth, he'll dominate. But a lot of times in these zone running schemes, the offensive linemen are forced to get to the second level, forced to reach an end or some sort of extra athletic move. And that's where his 3-cone comes into play and his vertical leap. And he has actually really good first or second round measurables other than his arm length and his age.
Skylar, you look like you want to say something there.
Yeah, so I actually agree with Matt. I think, as far as what kind of a blocker I think he is, he's definitely more of a pass protector than a run blocker. He's not the most overpowering offensive lineman. From the tape that I've seen from him, he can be, one of those guys that throws people around, but he's not going to do it at an extent where you're just, going to be content with throwing or kicking him inside the guard. I think he's a better, I guess you would say he's better project at left tackle than sticking him inside. But I will say this, the Panthers do like the idea of putting him inside. So they're going to be flexible with how they use him. Where he ends up permanently, I don't know. He may be one of those guys that can swing back and forth until he finds a home. But in terms of where he is, he's definitely not a guy that's going to mow that guy down in front of him, get to that second level quick. They're not going to run behind him a ton. They're going to really use his athleticism to their advantage.
Can I just throw in real quick, piggybacking off Matt? So Brady Christensen, 3-cone, 7.33, good. Spencer Brown, 6.96.
Oof.
No, Spencer Brown has got elite
93rd overall, and Brady was 70th. So they passed on Brown for Brady.
So let me just also say the Taylor Moton of it all. So when you take a Brown or a Dylan Radons or a guy that you're like, maybe he's a right tackle, now you got to start to switch to Taylor. And they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to take their right tackle and flop him to left tackle and do that. Or maybe they know he can't. But a lot of those prospects, like Spencer Brown, is a right tackle. Even though he has left tackle measurables, he's never played there. And some guys like Lane Johnson can't, even though they have 4.8 speed, they just can't do it. So I saw a lot of right tackles on the board, guys that were truly left tackles. They passed on Sam Cosme with one of those picks in the 50s. You might be like, thinking about this or that, but plus guys get hurt. I mean, Cam Irving is not that reliable. You could have a scenario where Cam Irving starts the season but doesn't finish the season, in which case Brady steps in like week 4 or something.
Very good.
Well, as far as drafting the offensive line goes, clearly they saw something in Christensen, and that's the best thing with offensive line in the draft is you got to find the player that fits your system. Cowboy Joe will back me up on this. Watching the Cowboys draft the offensive line year after year after year. It's all who fits into your system. Sometimes you just can't take the guy with the best available stats or who's the best available because he just doesn't fit. It's, square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't go.
Yeah.
No, and I agree with Skylar and Andy. I think they're going to put him inside, I think. I believe so.
Well, I think he'll get help from the next draft pick in Tremble because Tremble is a freaking mower of a blocker.
If Christensen does play left tackle, he will have the shortest arms of almost any left tackle in the league. That's like a fact, and it's gonna follow him around for his evaluations. But he's still gonna get a shot, and they're gonna give him that chance.
Shorter arms means less holding.
Baby. So, all right, you mentioned that that's a possibility that perhaps they should have gone with a tackle earlier on, but if they do that, then they don't have Terrace Marshall, and they have a tackle, and then they don't have the wide receiver. So it's you got to pick which one you want, and it looks like this is the avenue, obviously, that they went. All right, so let's move on to Tommy Tremble. And this is someone who, in my eyes, looks like he kind of takes two positions. He takes Alex Arma, who's gone, and he takes Chris Manhertz now, who's off the team. Skylar, what was your take on that? Do you think that's why they elected to go with Tremble? How do you see his role? Because they really didn't use a fullback in their offense. That wasn't the case. People are calling him Kyle Juszczyk. How is he going to play his role here with the Panthers?
Yeah, he'll definitely be a bit of a hybrid, and I know a lot of people were expecting the Panthers to get a pass-catching tight end in this draft, but I really think they needed to fill Chris Manhertz's role. I mean, Matt Rule has been on record saying time after time he thought Chris Manhertz was one of, if not the best blocking tight end in the entire league. How do you go about filling that? Maybe Tommy Tremble's the guy, but I mean, he's going to be a little bit in the backfield at fullback. He can go at tight end. And what I really think it does is it shores up pass protection. It shores up run blocking, and he's almost an extension of that offensive line. Either way, whether he's on the left side or right side, he's going to help that offensive line out that Matt Rule knows struggled a year ago and will likely see some struggles this year as they continue to grow. Again, like Matt said a little bit ago, Cameron Irving is not going to be the long-term answer here. I don't think he's going to be that, and you don't know what you're going to get out of him. Pat Elflein's kind of a big question mark. Matt Paradis has underperformed. John Miller's been okay, and Taylor Moton's pretty much the only stable that you have on that offensive line. So getting an extension of that offensive line, I think, was huge. Tremble has the ability to kind of clean up that area of his game where he can maybe be a target in the passing game. The skills and the talent are definitely there. But in terms of that, I think they're going to still lean on Dan Arnold and Ian Thomas.
Yeah, and if they're in 11 personnel, they're not going to have Arnold and Tremble on the field at the same time. And we all know that Joe Brady loves to use his three wide receivers. So that'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. Andy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, also don't forget, and I don't know how well he's been developing on the practice squad, but you also have another LSU kid in Steven Sullivan who's converted to tight end, who's more of a pass-catching option from that spot. So I think with Tremble, the beauty is you seem to think there's a day one starter just because of his blocking ability. Kind of a Kyle Juszczyk, kind of, could be that throwback fullback, could also play tight end, helps the line out. But when you look at what they did with the receivers, Ed and Terrace Marshall, as we talked about before, you get that larger bodied end zone kind of guy. So if you got Tremble, I mean, the upside's there for a pass catcher, but to me, it was just a draft season kind of crush for so many guys because of his athletic testing. There was kind of a reason why he was not always thought of in such high regard as he was when the draft ultimately got here, but I don't dislike the pick, especially for where they got him. They didn't have to reach to get him. And leading up to the draft, it kind of felt like Tremble might be like tight end 2 taken off the board. So I think he kind of fell to where he should go. So it's pure upside at this point. And again, it's helping your line and your blocking, if nothing else. And you have there's only one ball. When you got McCaffrey, you got these receivers they got. With everything they have, there's only one ball. So do you really need him to be a receiving threat for you? Just capable of being able to catch a ball.
Yeah, well, I think for Tommy, I mean, he could be like Curtis Samuel's the one who's gone on third down. He was the big one, but Tommy could be the one on 3rd and 5 where you put him in and he just throws a little block just to get him off, and then he sneaks out and then he makes the catch and he gets that first down. I think that's what they can expect out of Tommy. Will he get 800 yards a season? Absolutely not. But will he make those catches where Ian Thomas dropped them or Manhertz, where they couldn't on 3rd down, where you just needed 4 or 5 yards? They couldn't, but I think Tommy is the answer for that because he's a sneaky receiver.
And I think 3rd down conversions were a big struggle for the Panthers, especially this season.
They definitely were.
Our defense was just constantly needing to be just
out there
on the field, and it was very. It wears down any team eventually. If your defense is constantly on the field and they're not getting any breaks and they're not getting any time to rest between plays, and it's just not fair. So I think that it's a good.
Frustrating.
It is frustrating. That's why I thought it was a good pick.
Yeah,
I
Carolina.
like the pick, honestly.
Carolina was 24th last year in third down conversion.
See, Tommy's good, but it's going to kill my Darnold to Arnold T-shirt marketing. It's going to kill it, and I just don't. I like that marketing.
I like it. All right,
well, Arnold's another one though. Was a sneaky. He's sneaky, you know. He can sneak down a seam, and then he has a 50-yard touchdown. So don't get rid of that just yet.
Let's move on to Chuba Hubbard here.
Chuba. Okay, so I love the story with Chuba because
this is the running back who the Panthers like to be the understudy to Christian McCaffrey, and wow, I mean, this is a pretty decent running back. It's not like some running back who's coming in to kind of fill a role. Chuba Hubbard can play, and I'm really kind of curious to hear your take, Andy, on what you think of him. And Skylar too, what type of role do you think we'll see? Are we going to see any kind of a diminishing role from McCaffrey? I don't think so, but I mean, you never know, man. You just never know.
Yeah, I mentioned 3 guys I think they drafted outside of top 126, and it starts here with Chuba. This could be a top 50 player, return value in the league. I mean, a year ago, this was no worse than the second running back in the class. And he completely fell off. And then, it made me wonder, like, all right, were we just over-projecting him? And then, I started digging back and thinking back to 2020. And there was just so much going on, just besides just being a weird year, the pandemic, the political climate, everything like that. But let's not forget, this guy had a fallout with his coach that was public. Some people say he might have been dogging it a little after that, had the ankle issues, whatever it may be. I think we kind of have to just write off 2020 as something as like, this isn't really typical of what he was. So what did we feel about him after 2019? And like I said, no worse than the second running back. So you get a player that can kind of do it all and offer some versatility, and that's basically what you have with McCaffrey, right? I mean, the most versatile running back in the league. So to have him learn from him, and I mean, I don't know how real these rumors were, but when the Panthers were in play for Deshaun Watson, and it was Christian McCaffrey and our next 12 first-round picks, like, we'll give you whatever you want for him. I mean, that just, whether that was true or not, it just kind of made it seem like, yeah, he's a running back, he's expendable, so why not have that depth? And if Mike Davis could have a role behind CMC, then why can't Chuba Hubbard? So this was, to me, another phenomenal pick. A player I knew was going to slide just based on where everybody was kind of projecting him, but a guy I think we kind of overlooked because we overthought it and kind of put too much stock into 2020 for him when we probably shouldn't have.
Yeah. Skylar, your thoughts?
RB2 from day one, and it's not even close. I said this last year going into the season that I thought Carolina needed to add to that running back room, and they did. They stood pat with Mike Davis and those other guys. And those other guys, that's what they're going to be in 2021. They're going to be other guys. They're not going to have a big role in this offense because Chuba Hubbard can come in and be a dynamic player from game one. I mean, he's not as explosive as Christian McCaffrey, but he doesn't need to be. He just needs to take some of that load off of McCaffrey's shoulders to where he doesn't have to carry, or get 20 to 25 touches a game. That's just not going to be good for him or the team long term. And I think really this is an insurance pick because, again, like Andy just said, I mean, a year ago he was maybe late first round, early second round type of talent. He ran for 2,000 yards and 20 touchdowns in a season. And I know a lot of people like to dog the Big 12 and say it's not good defense, but if you look at the defenses over the past couple of years, the Big 12 has been significantly getting better on the defensive side of the ball. And at some points, you're looking at SEC games, and they're worse than the Big 12. So it just depends on which games you look at. I think, like I said, he's not the most explosive player, but he can do a little bit of both. He needs to work on being a better pass catcher out of the backfield. But I love this pick. I've been watching this kid play since he stepped on campus at Oklahoma State. And, again, it's an insurance pick because McCaffrey was 13 games a year ago. Running backs just do not last long in this league, and you have to have guys that can step up and play. If McCaffrey were to go down again, if he goes down again, now you have a better, more elite back, or I wouldn't say elite back, but a better talented or better skilled back than what Mike Davis was a year ago, who just kind of did everything out of toughness and just trying to get that extra yard. So I love this pick with Chuba Hubbard, and I'm surprised he fell to the 4th.
Well, it's interesting because the interesting thing about Chuba Hubbard, which is what I was trying to say before, was Matt Rule's wife, Julie, was calling him and saying, you better take Chuba because he
burned
Baylor like bad.
171, 2 touchdowns.
So, and David Tepper actually confirmed this story. He had said, Julie had texted Matt and said, you better come home with Chuba Hubbard. She remembered that name. And that's when coaches and their spouses, they see different people and they remember different people. Like Chuba stood out. She remembered her husband's team getting burned by him. She wanted to make sure he was on our team this time.
Yeah, that is a great story. I remember hearing that. And, of course, he'll say that she asked him to make the pick, but of course he made the pick. But anyway, all right, let's move on. I think we covered that pretty well. We got Davion Nixon, and we're already on like a minute or an hour and 10 minutes into the show here. We have Davion Nixon, Keith Taylor, and Deontay Brown. Any of those three guys stand out to you in this next tier here? And I'll start with Skylar. Any of those three guys stand out to you as guys that are like excellent picks, can fit in? Will be a role player, will have some sort of a role with the team, like right off the bat.
Yeah, I think Davion Nixon is the guy that jumps out to me. I mean, this is a guy that I thought was going to go maybe a round or two earlier. There was some concern about him maybe, having off the field stuff, not bad off the field stuff, but I think that may have played into him slipping. But, I mean, you talk about losing Zach Kerr, you cut Kawan short. You're going to need some guys to fill in that interior of the defensive line with Derek Brown. You signed Daquan Jones, but I think you need a little bit more. Bravion Roy is okay, but you don't know, is he going to be able to be a consistent contributor? So love Davion Nixon. He's an athletic defensive tackle. He's not kind of like Brady Christensen on the offensive side of the ball. He's not an overpowering guy. He's going to use his finesse to be able to do what he needs to do. And I think he can be a little bit of a pass rusher from that inside spot. I'm interested to see how he develops his pass rushing game, because they're going to need some of that, because Derek Brown's not necessarily an inside pass rush guy. He's just a guy that's going to clog up space and shut down the run game. And as far as the other two guys go, Deontay Brown, I think, is a guy that, again, for value, and that's the theme of this draft for the Panthers. For value, I think they got him at a good spot. Didn't give up a sack in his entire college career, but he's not the most athletic. And can he play at that weight or around it and not, get eaten up by these defensive linemen in the NFL? I think that's the biggest question mark with him long term, is can he play with that weight? Can he play at a high level? Keith Taylor, I hate the pick. I don't want to go too far into it, but I don't like it. I think his coverage skills are average at best, doesn't have good ball skills, got burned a lot. I just don't understand the pick there, especially when you drafted J.C. Horn earlier in the draft. I get maybe drafting for depth, but if that was the case, that's why you drafted Troy Pride a year ago and Stanley Thomas Oliver. So
right,
I don't know. I don't like that pick, but I mean, at that point, you're just kind of drafting for depth and hoping one of those guys pops off.
Right. Matt, any take on Deontay Brown?
I do. I have a little Deontay Brown spiel for you guys.
Okay.
He was on Matt Rule's team at the Senior Bowl, so they got a good close look at him. And he was the number 5 prospect in the state of Alabama the year that Quentin Williams came out. I mean, you're talking about a premium prep. He's the opposite of Brady. He's power. He's pure mauler. He had an AC joint. His shoulder was hurt, so he couldn't do bench presses, but he's known to be like a weight room demon, like the type of guy that could deadlift a car kind of guy. So, it was funny earlier, we saw that Brady Christensen thing, and he was joking about how he has an eating disorder. But, after the league is over, he's going to have to examine his eating habits. And Deontay Brown is an example of absolutely has to lose like 20 pounds or turn it into muscle or something, or he will wash out. He needs to like eat better. He needs to like take care of himself. You don't get to 350 like that by accident. Okay, so he needs to like treat his body like he's a professional. But if he does, he absolutely is. He was like a top 100 guy. Like he had starter potential before like he didn't bench press and he weighed in at 350 and ran like a 5.5. But like Orlando Brown ran a 5.5, and he's one of the going to be one of the highest paid linemen in the league in about a year. So just because a guy doesn't time well in the 40 is not like a death knell. I think he's a natural right guard. He started a million games at right guard for Alabama, and John Miller's like pretty upgradable dude. So I'm not going to say that this is like a slam dunk pick, but there's like, especially with the Senior Bowl connection, they have a plan for him.
I could be mistaken, but I feel like didn't Deontay Brown have a good Senior Bowl week?
Let me also add. I'm sorry to cut you off. He did. I mean, good or bad depends on what your system is. In terms of, he's more of a man zone. Some people want the zone guys, but he's more of in the phone booth guy. So it depends what kind of system you're trying to run. But last time I was on this show, we talked about how a prospect could have one great tape, one great day. Rashawn Slater had that great day against Chase Young. Deontay Brown had his great day against Derek Brown, Auburn, Carolina Panthers. So, you're talking about these guys are going to learn from their teammates. Like Ken Brady Christian play left tackle. Burns will find out. Like Shaq Thompson will find out, and Hassan Reddick will find out even before you get to preseason game 1.
Yep, good points. Good points.
I wanted to add on Davion Nixon. I agree with Skylar tremendously. This to me was a surprise that he dropped this far. He was my DT1. This was definitely a class that wasn't really deep or highly regarded from the defensive tackle position. But at the same time, he was still my number one rated on the board in the XTB draft guide. He was tied with Barmore for the top at the position. To me, he's definitely much more of a pass rusher than Barmore, much more capable of finding a way to get to the quarterback. In addition to being a run stopper and not letting things get by him, he could plug the holes and fill the gaps. But Barmore, watching him, he just seemed kind of stiff on tape, more just kind of product of the system because he's at Alabama, has the pedigree and the name. But if you watch the game, I mean, Nixon was taking on double teams because he was the only real threat in the Iowa defense. Bendy, he looked more like a defensive end playing defensive tackle than vice versa, where, Barmore looks just like a defensive tackle. And there's not much more to it besides his initial rush, where Nixon has clever ways to continue to keep the motor and the wheels turning and find a way to continue to play. So I really love Nixon. I was surprised he fell. This is another one of those guys I was talking about as, outside of 125 that could return top 50 value for this draft class. So another steal. And then when you talk about Brown, who I know Matt is, has a love affair with, it's about the 18th time he's mentioned this. So he finally got to talk about it. I'm only teasing you, Matt. But I remember him having a good Senior Bowl week, and I think it was kind of a product more of people being surprised he was having a good week, and Leatherwood, his teammate in particular, having a bad week. I think it was more surprise than anything. But this is a true guard, so if you miss on Christensen, you're basically just doubling down on what you're trying to do to the line, and definitely more of. I guess I shouldn't say more of, but. I was just leave it at that. Doubling down on getting at least one guy to add to the line.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Again, last time I was on with Jeff and Tom and Joe, we talked about how my best guard is the lowest guys on the tackle prospects. You take your tackle prospects, they fail, you move them to guard. And you're right, Deontay Brown doesn't have any place to go. But again, for the value, I think he was picked 191 or something, and I think that's the pick they threw in for Brady Christensen, to get from wherever they needed to get to. It was 193. So, I mean, you're talking about, these is really small point values. So for given what these are pretty like long shots at this point in the draft. There's actually statistics that prove undrafted free agents hit at a higher rate than some of these picks in the 200s.
Yeah, Deontay Brown's the most interesting one to me. I mean, there's always injuries on the offensive line. I just think he's gonna get inserted and he's gonna surprise some people. I know Skyler said he hated the Keith Taylor pick, but I'm gonna come to Keith Taylor's defense in one thing. The one thing that Keith Taylor has gotten a lot of praise for is he's a short tackler. He's one you put in if it's an obvious screen situation, it's 2nd and 20, and if they throw it to Kamara, he will bring Kamara down. He makes stuff.
Bring Kamara down.
He's a short tackler. He does get burned in coverage, but if you use him in situations like that, he'll return his value for a pick that was in the 5th round, and he's better in press coverage, which is what they're trying to get to. Maybe they don't like pride in man coverage and press coverage. Maybe they're going to try Taylor just in this system because it's a better fit. And Nixon, I can say that he's very, very talented, but he fell because people are saying, well, he only played in 8 games. So what can you really learn in that? But the talent's there for him.
Hey, Skyler, your thoughts on either Shi Smith, Thomas Fletcher, Phil Hoskins? Any kind of information that you got there?
Oh, I would say the last 2 picks there, Thomas Fletcher, Phil Hoskins, I don't really have much of an opinion. I was really shocked that Hoskins even got drafted. I thought that was a guy that would end up being an undrafted free agent. But Thomas Fletcher, this really sparks. If there's a controversial pick in this draft, it's Thomas Fletcher. I mean, who would have thought that a 7th round or 6th round pick, whatever that was, Thomas Fletcher, a long snapper, would be the most controversial pick in the Panthers draft because they have J.J. Jansen, who's been around the organization for years and years and years, and they just signed him to a 1-year contract extension this offseason. So, it's a position that a lot of people don't really look at or care about too much, but Matt Rule thought enough of him to go ahead and get him now because Washington, if you remember, took a long snapper right after that pick. So they must have had their eyes on Thomas Fletcher as well. They had to have known that to go ahead and take him.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's the reason there for that. I would assume that's going to spell the end for Jansen. As far as Hoskins, I think that's kind of a long shot that I don't know if he's even going to be a guy that dresses. It's going to be, again, a depth piece. Can he come in, compete, and battle with Bravion Roy, Davion Nix, and some of those guys in the back end of that DT spot? But as far as Shi Smith, I think he's an explosive receiver that had poor quarterback play at South Carolina and poor coaching. I think he just didn't have a chance to really develop. He's got raw skills, and he has the ability to return kicks, which I think is really going to help him kind of get his feet wet in the NFL. Because I think he's almost really similar, to kind of like a Pharaoh Cooper in the way he can affect the game. So I think Shi Smith is a depth guy that people are going to expect him to come in and get snaps right away. But don't forget Brandon Zylstra's there, who impressed the coaching staff, Keith Kirkwood, and even Omar Bayless, who's an undrafted free agent from last year. So there's going to be a lot of talent in that wide receiver room, especially in the back end.
I was actually going to ask you guys how you guys felt about Omar Bayless and if there's something you hear being closer to the team and just if he has a shot. Because that's take away the draft class. That's an unforgotten kind of sleeper type of upside guy that unfortunately had to have surgery last year. I'm happy to see he's kind of still in the building, but does he last?
Yeah, I think that's going to be an interesting story to watch because they were blown away by him last year. I mean, the amount of times that they talked about him, I mean, you would have thought that he was going to get significant playing time and some serious snaps, whether it be as the number 4 or 5 guy. And it almost seems as if there was not even a question as if he was going to make the 53-man roster. It was just kind of a given. So I think it's all going to come back to how he responds from this injury. Does he come back and show some of the same things that he did last year? And if he does or shows, a little bit of it, he's going to make this team, I think. And he's going to be maybe that 5 or 6 guy on that wide receiver spot. But if not, then, I think it's going to come down to, do they keep him or Shi Smith or maybe, cut Kirkwood? So it's going to get real interesting in the back end of that.
Yeah, I loved him at Ark State in his final year, his senior season, but gave me Corey Washington vibes as the guy who's going to break out in training camp and preseason, even though we probably won't have a preseason anymore. But that kind of Corey Washington type that everybody's going to fall in love with and be like, oh, I forgot about this guy. I just got to say real quick, Jeff, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention with Davion Nixon, one of the other big upsides is you took Derek Brown last year. So Davion Nixon, speaking to the depth of what this team is building, this guy just gets to play in the shadows of, Derek Brown. So even more opportunity for him to just flourish, not have to worry about double teams coming his way and whatnot. So just another tremendous pick.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of this here, and
Before
hopefully
we go, though,
Yeah.
I want to say something about Thomas Fletcher. Okay,
Okay.
I was so stoked for this kid. Let me just say that Tepper Fletcher Rule phone call was so great, where he was like, "I will crawl to Carolina." And here's the thing: we as fans, we're passionate about our teams, no matter what team we rep. For me, Jeff, Skylar, it's the Panthers. So when a guy wants to play for us and he's excited to come, I can't help but get excited for them to come. And Thomas Fletcher, now he's a man who played with Rule with the Senior Bowl, and he just wanted to be a Panther. I mean, how the heck can you not love that? I'm like, I love this dude already. He said he would crawl to Carolina for us. I mean, come on, let's be real. JJ, he's not going to be around forever. Fletcher will be our long-term long snapper.
Lock it up.
Lock it up. Throw it away the key.
Well, it also goes into the whole will over skill approach too, as well, right? So there's a lot of fit there, and confidence is everything. It seems at this level, and I think Rule gave him a lot of confidence, and hopefully that will translate. All right, well, guys, I think we did a really good job of covering these guys, and kind of explain to you and the viewers all about these players, how they're going to translate to the NFL, a little bit more about them, what other pros think about them, going back to J.C. Horn, the Terrence Marshall pick, and John Lobb and his energy, man. I will share these videos, all of them, in the comments so you can watch them. But real quick, 30 seconds each here. Andy, Skylar, and Matt, just kind of tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing and where you can be found, and just kind of plug yourself here for about 30 seconds.
I'm the two-time defending Panthers Pride champion. Pending results of tonight, we'll see what happens. But you can find me on Twitter at People's Pen. I'm the owner, founder of Expand the Box Score, which was built off advanced statistics for college football. We do pros as well. We've added a scouting department this past year. We just launched and released in February our first annual NFL draft guide, 378 full scouting reports, including specialists like long snappers like Fletcher. So everything is in there. All of your draft needs, $12. Even though the draft has happened, it's not too late. You can get full scouting reports on every single player, even the ones we didn't cover tonight, the ones you're unsure of, the ones you're not too familiar with. So go check that out. All the links are in my profile. And really just follow me on Twitter. You'll find everything I'm doing.
He's a great follow. I love following you, Andy.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank you for coming, too. Appreciate
No problem. I'm happy to be here.
First off, I just want to say thanks to Jeff and everybody for having me on here. This was a lot of fun, and hopefully you guys will have me back in the future sometime. But you can follow me on Twitter at Callahan _. You can follow the Panthers SI Twitter account at SI_Panthers. And then I know there is some West Virginia fans in North Carolina. I also cover the West Virginia Mountaineers on SI as well. You can follow that at SI_WView. So we've got a ton of stuff up. Going up every single day. We don't take a day off, so I hope you guys can come and check us out.
I would love to, and thank you for taking time out of your evening, Skylar, and joining us. I greatly appreciate it. We all do.
Yes,
absolutely. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm at Draft Daddy. I'm the offensive line analyst over at Football Guys. I rank the offensive line every week. Injuries, analysis, matchups against defensive front sevens. You want to make your money in your IDP league. You want to win that thing. Get a Football Guys subscription. It's the best money you can spend, baby. So I'm a writer. I write freelance. I write novels. So hopefully one day you'll be reading that stuff too.
I would love to. Matt, it's always a pleasure as well. Thank you for your time this evening. We all appreciate it.
Send us a copy of your novel.
Please sign it, autograph
Got
it.
it. You guys will be the first ones besides my parents.
All right,
Awesome.
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, guys, let's tie a bow up on this here for Cowboy Joe, for Brittany and Tom. Thanks again, and Matt, Andy, and Skylar. We really appreciate you coming on, and kind of sharing
Friday
your
night
information.
too. Thanks.
Yeah, on a Friday night.
You
Sharing
spent it
your
with us.
knowledge,
We love it. Thank you.
your opinions, everything. So thank you. Hopefully, we all learned a lot from you. And we'll see you next time on Carolina Fandom. Thanks so much, guys.
Found him.
We're going.
Christian McCaffrey in the open field, inside the 30, inside the 20. McCaffrey touchdown.
You know, and it's funny because